All right, so hi guys. Oh, shit. Good start. Um, Hello, and welcome to my class on personal finance. Calling it How to Money. I realized shortly after that that's an existing thing, so I might change the name. But anyways, so up front, I want to talk a little bit about what I'm hoping you get out of this class and yeah, just generally the goals. So the the most important thing is I want to give a blend of um, both concrete steps that you can take that are going to improve your overall financial situation, um, as well as more of a sort of, I guess, conceptual idea of how to make your money work for you. And I don't mean that necessarily in the sense of investing every dollar you have, but just in the sense of like being purposeful about your money. Um, and another thing I really want to stress is I am very much a proponent that um, money is really just a tool. Um, the point of money is to use it so that you can improve your own mental health and to make it so that you don't have to work as much. Like throughout your lifetime, you're going to have to work some amount in order to live in this harsh capitalist society. Um, but if you are smart about your money and you save it and you invest it and you use it wisely, your money is going to do a lot more for you, again, in terms of making you healthy and happy than if you're not spending it and using it in a purposeful way. Um, so ultimately, this is a class about money and handling money and all that. But really, I think that if you come out of this class and you feel like what I want you to get out of this class is a feeling of control. Like money is this kind of big, scary thing that's always kind of hanging over people's heads. And I want to help that feel more like you know what's going on with your money and how to, control it. And um, yeah, so really, Jesus, kids screaming next door. Um, yeah, so really this is a health class. I'm trying to think of it that way. I want to help you guys to lead overall healthier lives through gaining financial stability because having a stable financial life really does help your overall health. Um, so, couple disclaimers up front. Um, Everybody's situation is different, especially 2020. Like, I know probably, I know it's only the four of you here, but assuming people watch this, probably a lot of people are, out of the job right now or have less work than usual or whatever. Like, not everything I say is going to be applicable to everyone, um, but chances are that all the advice is going to matter to you at some point. If you don't have a 401k and I start telling you how to invest your 401k, that doesn't matter right now. But I'm just hoping that this kind of generally gains knowledge for you overall. Um, and also, I know that there's like some legality about like if you give people financial advice that they can sue you or something. So yeah, don't sue me. Um, And to that end, I'll give advice, but I'm not gonna like tell you any specifics. I'm not gonna tell you exactly what to do and when, and definitely not gonna actually like, run your accounts for you. Um, and then yeah, lastly, uh, I don't really have credentials, like I don't have certification or anything. But I have been interested in this stuff for a while, and I have been able to um, save pretty effectively while I've been working. And so I thought this would be, helpful and useful to you people. And of course, I'm doing this for free. I'm not going to give you guys any referral links or anything. I don't have any vested financial interest in any of this. So, before I get into the thick of it, um, any questions or anything you guys would find helpful to establish about this class? No? Okay, cool. All right. So, a huge part of being financially stable and having good personal finance is building your savings. It's not the only part of personal finance, but it is a big part. And so that's where we're going to start. And the obvious way of building savings is that you have to earn more money than you are spending. And that seems obvious because it is. Um, but most people, I would hazard, um, don't really know exactly how much they're saving because they can't really answer these three questions. And if they could, so like, think to yourself, how much did you earn last month? So that first question, chances are, I figure probably you have a decent idea. You probably have a pretty good idea of how much you made last month. You could find out in maybe 5 minutes a more exact number, check your bank account or whatever. Um, but then that next question, how much did you spend? I would guess most people don't really have a good dollar value for that. Um, they could probably pull it up. Again, it would take like 10, 15 minutes to go sort through their accounts and tally stuff up and run a spreadsheet or whatever. And then the last question, I'm guessing most people can't answer at all. Or if they did, it would take like hours to go through their credit card statements, tally up where the stuff went and how much they spent on all these things. And so it seems so basic. You have to earn more money than you spend. But these three basic questions are generally pretty annoying to answer. For most people, this would take, potentially like an hour a month just to answer this question. And nobody's going to do that. I'm not going to do it. You're going to, that's just terrible. So instead, the very first thing you have to do in your financial life is you have to know where the money is coming from and where it is going to. You have to track your money. Um, and to do that, there is basically three options. Mint.com. So that's going to be my recommendation. If you've never tracked your money before, if you've never used any of these products before, go to mint.com and make an account. I'm going to give a little rundown of what it can do in a minute. But basically, you give it all your accounts. You tell it, your bank account, your credit cards, your student loans. You can even, I think, put in like bills and investments. And then it will, as you are using your credit card and making purchases and stuff, it will actually automatically um, route that into different categories and show you exactly how much you're spending automatically for you. And I'll show you in a second that. Um, the second option is called You Need a Budget. It's basically the same thing as Mint. It's a budgeting software, but it doesn't do auto import. The nice thing about Mint is you just tell it your credit card login and then it'll just auto update for you. You Need a Budget, you have to put everything in manually, which I have no interest in, and I'm guessing you probably don't either. And then lastly, Personal Capital does not have very good budgeting tools, but it's really good at investing, like tracking your net worth and stuff. So if you already have good savings, and we'll define that in a moment, personal capital might be better for you. It's what I use, but I used Mint for years from college up until I think maybe a year ago, and it's really good, but less good for investing.
I have a quick question, and if you're going to go over it later, you can certainly say, but like, what's the security concern for giving something like Mint your credit card information and logins?
Yeah, um, so Mint is owned by Intuit, the people who own TurboTax. So you do give Mint and Personal Capital all of your logins, and it feels really stupid and sketchy. Um, but the only real failure is if Intuit gets hacked and somehow loses their passwords. Um, and from where I sit, I'm not too concerned about that because if Intuit gets hacked, that means that everyone's tax information and all of their bank logins just got hacked. So, in terms of you losing all your money because you put your passwords in Mint, I don't think that's a very serious concern. Um, it is a good thing to bring up, um, but you know, uh, uh, the way I think of it is like if if Intuit got hacked and your bank account got drained, that would be like national news, you know? Like that wouldn't be just some petty hacker stole your stuff. Um, that would be a big, big deal, and you would almost certainly get restitution. Um, but it is a valid concern. Um, I would say that the um, benefits outweigh the risks because tracking your money really is step zero. Um, but yeah, if you're sketched out by it, there's always you need a budget. Uh, that answer your question sufficiently?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Um, cool. So these are some screenshots of Mint. So you can see it shows you your accounts. It'll show you how much cash you got in the bank, how much you're floating on your credit cards, your loans, investment. If you own a house, you can put your house in there and stuff. Um, and this gives you your very high level overview of where you're sitting right at the moment. And in addition, as I said, so this is really the meat and the potatoes of Mint is it will track out every single transaction you make in every account, and it'll show you exactly how much it was, and it automatically categorizes it for you, um, which I have found the categories to be quite good at automation. All it has to go off of is the description field. So sometimes it's off and you have to go and fix it. But for the most part, if you make if you buy something, if you spend some money, it's going to go and tell you exactly what that was going towards. Um, so this is the view you get once you have some spend. It automatically parses it out into budgets. It defaults to your normal monthly costs, and then you can set it to whatever you want. So if you are like, holy crap, I can't believe I spent $400 last month on Uber Eats or whatever, you can switch it so that, and you can even put specifically Uber Eats into one category and set that to $300 or whatever. Um, and then lastly, it does give you breakdowns. So you can choose, from this time period to this time period, how much should I spend on what? And so the incredible power of Mint is that every single month, at any moment, you'll be able to just log in and immediately know I have this much money, I'm spending this much money, I earn this much money, and it's all just laid out beautifully and perfectly for you. Um, so I highly, highly recommend that you use Mint. However, any way that you want to track your money is what you should do. But tracking is essential. Um, so then, quickly, a brief aside, jumping back to the kind of mental health aspect that I do want to focus on is so there's this thing called the hedonic treadmill, which is a well-observed psychological effect wherein if something good or bad happens to a person, they feel better than average or worse than average, and then quickly return to a normal baseline happiness. I'm sure we've all like felt it before. You really want the Switch or whatever the new thing, and you buy it and it's amazing and you're super happy. Oh my God, I got this new thing. And then a week later, you're just back where you were before. And that treadmill, it's called like the hedonic treadmill, is when you fall into this loop of endlessly buying stuff because you want to find that momentary high before you go back to your baseline level of happiness. Um, and I think that, and I call this out specifically because the two sides of um, saving money is how much you're earning and how much you're saving, or how much you're earning and how much you're spending. So, as I said before, if you want to save money, you've got to earn more than you spend. Um, and controlling your earnings is very difficult. Earning more money is super hard. It takes months of effort, sometimes years of effort, to significantly impact your earnings. Um, so focusing on earnings is really difficult, but focusing on spending is relatively easy. And so that's also why I emphasize tracking your money, is so that you can see exactly how much you spent on Starbucks or whatever your vice of choice is, um, so that you can try to control and reduce that spending and hopefully get out of this hedonic treadmill of constantly trying to chase that high of buying things and feeling good. But this does not mean don't treat yourself. Um, Not at all. That's different. You know, if you just got your PhD or you just got a new job or it was a tough week at work and you get to Friday night and you're like, man, that was a tough week. I want to do something to treat myself. So you order out food or whatever, and you normally wouldn't order out food, or you buy a nice beer, a nice bottle of scotch or whatever. That's fine. That's not the hedonic treadmill, because that's not that thought of like I gotta chase that, keep getting that same high I was getting. That's just you being kind to yourself in more of a one-off fashion. And those sorts of purchases are the ones that, and this is kind of more what I'm getting at, is like having a good personal financial life is making it so that your money really, you get a lot of value out of your money. Like deciding to buy the extra thing of fries at McDonald's or whatever. Sometimes that really hits the spot and it's only $3. Um, and so, yeah, treating yourself is good, but um, getting it to where you hit like a new normal is um, to be avoided. It's called lifestyle inflation. Um, so, yeah, I was trying not to make that too preachy, but I hope that concept is helpful, because I do think that um, modern capitalist society really wants you on the hedonic treadmill, and it doesn't actually make you happier. It's just an endless loop. Um, does that make sense? Is that felt a little shaky?
Yeah, could you explain the idea of, or what you exactly meant by lifestyle inflation again?
Oh yeah. So there's this thing called lifestyle inflation that is uh, basically the hedonic treadmill, but over a long course of time. And it usually happens due to making more money. And it's where you, you know, normally you're poor as shit, so you make coffee at home. And then one week you decide to get it Starbucks. And then you're like, oh man, that was great. So then you start getting it at Starbucks twice a week. And then eventually you're getting it every single day. Um, that's where you just kind of let your lifestyle slowly creep up and up and up and get more and more expensive for like minor conveniences. I mean, this is not a good example because of COVID, but like getting groceries delivered instead of going to the grocery store, you do it once, but then eventually you get used to it and you just start doing it all the time. Um, you can accidentally end up with a lot of expensive hobbies that aren't actually making you any happier because you're just used to them. You know, it's
So, how does that relate to, like, at the beginning, you used the example of like something like a Nintendo Switch, which is like an expensive purchase, but not a purchase that you necessarily like. That's not something that you're doing like every 2 weeks. That's like, but it's like an expensive purchase of an object that you might need. How does that relate to this kind of thing?
yeah. So certainly, um, yeah, certainly it mostly relates in that uh, if you, I guess it's more about if you are buying the thing because you want to buy a thing. You know, like if you bought the Switch because you know it's going to be a good long-term entertainment investment, like which I think I personally have gotten more than $300 worth out of my Switch for sure. Um, that's one thing, but if you hear about the Switch and you get all super hyped up about it and you buy it and then it ends up not fulfilling your expectations and you have buyer's regret, that's more of falling for this hedonic treadmill. Does that make sense? Helpful?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, cool. All right. So after you have your money tracked, the first step is to set up an emergency fund. Um, and again, to get back to my point about mental health, having an emergency fund is the single biggest thing you can do to improve your uh, mental stability as it relates to your financial life. Um, and an emergency fund is literally just a bank account that has between 3 and 6 months of expenses in it. Um, and no matter what, no matter who you are, where you are, how rich you are, or whatever, having 3 to 6 months of expenses readily available in a something like a savings account anywhere that's quick and easy to get to will dramatically improve any situation where shit hits the fan. If you ever get in a car crash, if you ever suddenly get sick, if you ever lose your job, whatever, having that cushion of 3 to 6 months to get back on your feet, um, or having that cushion of like, oh shit, I need a new car, and you can just walk out and buy a new car is so just like mind-blowingly helpful for your overall stability. And importantly, it gets you out of living paycheck to paycheck, which, um, jumping back to the lifestyle inflation thing, most Americans live paycheck to paycheck. I think, I don't know what the stat was, but definitely more than half of people are basically spending what they earn in every month, or they're floating some credit card debt to get from month to month. Um, and living paycheck to paycheck is probably the most stressful financial situation you can be in, because if that paycheck stops coming, you are just SOL. Um, so having this emergency fund will really, really help you, and it breaks you out of that cycle of just, and that is really, I don't know how many people listening and watching this have this cycle, but that cycle of just, I earned this much, so I'm going to spend that much, just leaves you as a wage slave forever. You're just stuck in this job and you can never leave. So building your savings, and again, being able to track and see where your money is going so that you can know how much 3 to 6 months of expenses actually um, is enormously helpful. And if you get Mint, that will help you with seeing what your expenses are. So that's step one, is to, after you've started tracking your money, save until you have a buffer, this 3 to 6 month buffer. Before that, you don't have to worry about any other financial goals. Don't worry about investing. Don't worry about anything, with the caveat that credit card debt is very high interest, and most likely what you want to do is instead keep a buffer of about $1,000 and spend the rest of it paying off your credit card debt. Having credit card debt is terrible. It's really, really bad. It gets out of control really quickly. So don't do that. Any questions on emergency funds before I move on? Cool. I think this is a concept a lot of people are aware of. So anyways. So your emergency fund is, as I said, probably going in a savings account. So just briefly, I wanted to talk about choosing a bank. The first point is the biggest point. It really doesn't matter that much. The most important point is that you have an FDIC insured account to put your money in, which if you have a creditor savings account at any major institution, it is FDIC insured, meaning even if the bank goes belly up, you're going to be covered up to $250,000 by the federal bank. So that being said, if you have an account, if you're happy with it, stick with it. This class is not about making you feel like you need to squeeze every little penny out of everything. But if you do want to do some penny squeezing, you should think about using an online bank. The only real downside of using an online bank is that if you work in cash, they're terrible. Because you can't deposit the cash because there's no branches. But that being said, besides that, they're more or less better in every way. My Ally bank account has a 0.5% interest rate right now, whereas like Chase and Bank of America, I think, are at like 0.01. So I've got 50 times higher interest rate than the big banks. They tend to be a lot more lenient on things like overdraft fees, and Ally doesn't have any account minimums, so you can have a literally $0 bank account. They won't charge you for it, which, holy shit, I can't believe that's legal. But anyways, Ally also reimburses ATM fees up to $10 a month. There are other online banks that reimburse all ATM fees, like I think Charles Schwab does that. Yeah, online banks are good. They don't have the overhead of branches, which is a huge part of the overhead of running a bank, because land is expensive and employees are expensive. So consider it. I use Ally. There's also Discover Bank, Charles Schwab, and something called Alliance Credit Union I didn't know about before today. But also, if you have one that works, don't worry about it. The only bank I would caution against is Wells Fargo. If you have a Wells Fargo account, I would recommend that you get it out of there and into another bank, because Wells Fargo is full of con men who cheated people into making accounts that they didn't want, and they have outrageous fees, and minimums, and they intentionally will reorder your transactions to maximize the number of overdraft fees that you take. Don't use Wells Fargo. They're terrible. So yeah, that's not super important, but you do need a bank account for sure to have your emergency fund in. Okay. So nextly, I want to talk about credit. So credit as a concept, I guess it's not really proof that you pay your debts. Credit is, well, I guess it is, but when people say a credit score, what they're really talking about is there are 3 credit agencies that have a long and mired history of screwing over the little guy and being invasive for privacy. And they look at pretty much your entire financial history to decide whether you are the kind of person who pays their debts or not. So when you see that so if you have a high credit score or a low credit score, it means that these 3 agencies, Equifax, TransUnion, and the other one, they look at your financial history and just spit out this number between, I think, 500 and 800. And it's good to have that number higher because when you have a high credit score, it means that people are more willing to lend you money. And that means that anytime you need to borrow money, be it for a credit card or a car loan or importantly a house, they're more willing to give you your loan cheaper. They'll have the interest rates lower because they see that you're willing to pay your debts. So if you don't have a credit card, you absolutely need to get a credit card because building your credit is something that happens slowly over time. You know, you don't pay off 1 month of your debts to prove that you pay your debts consistently. You have to pay off your debts for years to prove that you are reliable and are going to pay your debts. And the easiest way to do this is to get a credit card and then always pay the full amount on the credit card at the end of the month, every single month. And to never spend more than you have. As I said, treat it like a debit card. And that alone will grow your credit. You really don't have to worry about anything else besides paying your other debts. You know, if you default on your student loans, that's going to hurt your credit score significantly. And the upshot, the upshot of credit cards is that once you have a good credit score, you can actually get rewards cards. So if you don't have a credit card, there's starter cards like the Capital One Platinum or the Discover It. Those are 2 good ones to target as your first credit card. But once you have a good credit score, something ideally over 700, ideally 720, 750, you can start targeting these rewards cards. For example, the Citi Double Cash card, which will give you 1% back on every time you spend money and 1% back every time you pay the card. So I have that credit card, and that means that I have a 2% raise. Like everything, or I guess it's more, everything I buy is just 2% off forever. Everything. And over the course of owning this card, I've literally made back thousands of dollars. It helped a lot when I was getting married and I was spending a lot of money on credit cards. But that sounds like not a lot, but when it's everything you buy is going through these reward cards, it really adds up quickly. And another more minor point is uh, sometimes you get like credit card mailers probably that say sign up and we'll give you $1,000 or whatever, or not $1,000, a few $100s. I have actually used there's like the Delta Gold Sky Miles card that gives you 50,000 points if you spend like $3,000 in the first 3 months or something like that. If you're ever doing any big international travel, it is not a bad idea to see what sort of flight credit cards there are, because a lot of them have intro offers that when I went to Spain, I ended up getting there for free but not back. So I saved like $1,200 just on this one credit card. Um, so yeah, any questions on credit cards?
I have one question on accounts and one on credit cards.
Yeah.
So typically, what's the difference between like a checking account and a savings account and having your money in one or the other?
Yeah, so the only meaningful difference is usually the interest rate. Savings accounts can have higher interest rates than checking accounts because there are actually legal transaction limits on savings accounts. So for example, through Ally, I am not allowed to do more than 6 transactions a month on my savings account. So literally all I do in a normal month is just my paycheck goes in there and then however much I need to pay for everything comes out. Um, and then a checking account is meant for more, day-to-day uh, things and stuff like utilities you'll pay from your checking account. Um, another, so in general, you should have the bulk of your money in your savings account. Your emergency fund should be sitting in your savings account, and then your checking account is just however much you're expected to pay out for, the month or whatever.
Yep. And then the other question is, so to what extent, like I know there are cards that, will give you like 3 or 4% on like very specific purchases. So like specifically like 3 or 4% on groceries or gas or something like that.
Mm.
Do you personally juggle cards to do stuff like that?
Yeah, so for those not in the know, so the reward card that I talked about, the Citi Double Cash card, is just 2% on everything. There's also other credit cards that will be like you get 5% off on gas and 3% off on groceries. And then they'll often do stuff where like it rotates every month or every 3 months, where it's like this month, restaurants, you get 5% back. And I did do that for a little while. And going back to my mental health point, it just wasn't worth it. I was making maybe, an extra $10 a month or whatever for the headache of carrying around like 3 or 4 credit cards and trying to keep track of which one was the gas card this month and shit like that. And it just wasn't worth the the mental strain to me. So I ended up liking this 2% card because it's always a good deal. It's never a bad time to make 2% back, and it's on absolutely everything. Um, that being said, if you want to eke out the extra $10 or whatever, you can try to do that by getting other cards. One that you could consider if you do a lot of Amazon purchases is Amazon has a card that gives 5% back on all Amazon purchases. So you could think about that one, but it's all up to you. Um, yep. Okay. So that was my intro. Um, so for homework, if you don't have a bank account or a credit card, get a bank account or a credit card. If you want any guidance on that, please feel free to talk to me about how to get a bank account and a credit card. And then besides that, you should set up probably a Mint account, or if for whatever reason you need a budget or personal capital really spoke to you, feel free to use those too. Um, and for extra credit, you can set up a budget for yourself. But besides that, that was really, I just wanted to go over the basics of, you know, tracking your spending and getting things somewhat under control and slowly building this emergency fund before getting into the higher concepts of investing and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, any questions from any of you guys? Anything you want clarified or felt could be more helpful?
There's a question about what you can purchase with a credit card. Can you pay for rent on a credit card, or is that like something that's not done?
So usually not. If you can pay for rent on a credit card, it would be something that your landlord would have to specifically offer, and
I
most of them
see.
don't. Yeah.
I was saying, I guess most of them kind of get withdrawn directly from, like, they ask for like a routing number from your bank.
Yeah.
But I guess if they had the option to, like, on their website, an option to do it through a card, I don't know if mine does. Like, would it, theoretically, you'd be able to do it with the credit card?
Yeah. Like I said, it depends on the landlord. I actually, the last place I lived was a big corporation, and they let you pay for credit card, but they charged like 5% or something obscene.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
it was pointless.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things to know about credit cards is that, like, the reason some businesses don't like them or won't take them under a certain transaction is because if you pay with a debit card, your bank handles the transaction fee, and if you pay for a credit card, the merchant handles the transaction fee.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, every time you use a credit card, it costs the business a few percent, which is kind of bullshit, but it is how the way it worked out. Yeah, one other thing I wanted to briefly mention is, so I talked about, increasing earnings is hard, decreasing spending is easy. I did want to break that down a little bit more into, when I talk about spending, there's really a few categories of spending, because there's a fundamental difference between rent and electricity and internet and utilities and the food and things that you have to buy versus things that you choose to buy in a particular month. So that's another thing that Mint is really helpful for, is letting you not only know how much you're spending, but to aggregate, these are the things that I don't really have a choice on, like you can try to reduce your electricity costs and you can try to reduce your food costs. But the more, concrete, hard to change spending versus your more fluid spending on things like, just purchases you decide to make, stuff you buy on Amazon or whatever that you didn't necessarily need to buy but chose to. So when I talk about this 3 to 6 months of expenses, ideally it's just your total spend in an average month, because if shit hits the fan, it's not like you're going to just stop buying all non-essential items. But having your emergency fund be only the actual essential things, food, rent, utilities, that's fine too, because if shit hits the fan, you lose your job, whatever, you're not going to be buying, vintage Tamagotchis on eBay for a few months. At least I hope not. So, yeah. Quick thought.
have you considered that vintage Tamagotchis are the Bitcoin of early 2000s fake pets?
I hadn't, but we're not doing investing yet, so we'll get to that when we get to it.
Have you considered it might cost you more money to not go out and buy vintage Tamagotchis off eBay?
I hadn't, but again, investing will come later, Caleb. This is, all right, cool. That was really all I wanted to go over in the first episode. So the only other thing I wanted to talk about was